Welcome to another webinar offered by the Center for Nonprofit Resources. My name is Heather Bradley. I'm the director, and I'm delighted today to be with David Topoleski from the Toledo Lucas County Public Library. Welcome, David.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, David's going to spend some time talking about the amazing resources that are available through our public library system, and particularly resources at the main library downtown in Toledo. There'll be plenty of time for questions. This will be offered as a replay on our website with the associated presentation. And without further ado, David, I'm always delighted to partner with you in offering this great information. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Heather. It's always a privilege and a pleasure to work with you with the Center and the Greater Toledo Community Foundation. My apologies for thinking that you had done your introduction. Of course, it'd be deeper and broader than that. And I do hope we have some time at the end, everybody, to learn more about the Center. If you haven't spent some time on their website, please do. It's absolutely fantastic. Okay, so as we move forward, I'll work into what the Foundation Directory Online product offers and how fantastic it is. We'll do some sample searching. I'll definitely show you some things on our library website as well. And again, feel free at any time. Heather will be monitoring the chat. Or if you feel free, we're a smaller group. You know, if you can stay on mute during the presentation here, fantastic. But if you're not being answered on the chat side, please just go ahead and raise your hand or unmute and just say, hey, David, got a question. It looks like we've got another person coming in here, and I think it's going to be Patty Robb, who I've known Patty for a long time, and hopefully we'll have a chance to hear from her in a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that I can move forward here. So you can see on the screen that today we're going to look at what is this Foundation Directory Online. I'm sure several of you, in fact, I know some of you have used this product before. Comes from the nonprofit known as Candid now, which is an aggregation of the Foundation Center and GuideStar. It's an amazing product because it's looking at all of the foundational giving on a real-time basis, pretty much. I mean, it's being updated, I believe, every day. To look and understand what are the needs before you look into FDO. In fact, one of the things that you'll get in a handout version, and if you're joining us late, I am David Topoleski. I'm the manager of the Business and Workforce Department at Main Library. My colleague, who is our grant specialist, Zachary Huber, is not able to join us today. He's working on some other important nonprofit work and sends his greetings, but you will have all of his contact information. And one of the things that Zach's excited to include in the handouts is a flowchart guide from the Foundation Center Candid about if this, then that, and taking you through that nonprofit journey and what types of resources are available by Candid through some of the Foundation Center resources. Okay. This looks like Zach realized that when they shared this with us, that one that just popped up with the Get Help decides to creep up earlier than it should. So find prospects with a project-based search. The whole idea there is when you search by subject, when you search by keyword in Candid, in the FDO product, how can you find things based on the projects that you're working on? And that makes sense. You want to align them with your mission and if the goals, the strategic planning that your nonprofit's doing. Okay, next, are those a good fit for your needs? Sometimes people will talk, and I know a lot of times both Heather and others that I've worked with, from Mary Sabecki from the Need More Fund, Chris Judd from the Community Foundation, talk about mission drift. And that could be a dangerous thing where you're trying to fit into a grant opportunity that isn't really what your organization does. So it's really important to evaluate if that's a good fit for what your needs are. Identify options for accessing FDO. So the best way, if you feel safe, and we have a lot of different precautions here in the building to make sure that you can safely use our Foundation Directory Online computer at the main library, and again, the professional product, is to come into our library here. The other options we will definitely discuss. And then how to get additional help with FDO, and that goes along with the handout that I was talking about that Zach will send out that will have live links as well. So you can search online for funders. You can look for those requests for proposals. the foundations are not required to put out RFPs, so those won't be a big part of how you would use the candid.org webpage or some of the resources, but it is one way. You can look through GuideStar. As if everyone's familiar with GuideStar, there are some free parts of GuideStar, and it's a fantastic interface to look at all of those 990s and understand who is out there and what do you look like in there. So one of the things that we've seen with GuideStar coming together with Foundation Center to make what's called Candid, and again at candid.org, O-R-G, is that now GuideStar has some rankings based on what you've put into GuideStar to give you from a bronze, silver, gold, etc. I believe I have a platinum and past there, or maybe platinum's top, where when people are searching for, in other words, if a foundation were to look at you and your organization in GuideStar, they would see your profile in there. So it's very important to use GuideStar as a free product to go in and make sure that your nonprofit's not only in there, but the information is correct. The more that you put in there and that they need for benchmarking, the better your rating will not only appear in GuideStar, but what's happening now within the Foundation Directory Online interface is it will actually show for foundations, for nonprofits, what their sort of level of star is in there. And then of course, you can look at all the 990s. So you can see those patterns of giving and where recipients have received money. With most databases, I think each of you know that there's a double sort of sided aspect to it. You're looking for funders, but you're also spying on fellow nonprofits. You want to go and find out, how did they receive money? Who are their funders? How might you take advantage of those same resources? And it's pretty fantastic because you're looking at a whole plethora of national foundational giving and beyond, and seeing how other organizations have received their funding. I want to pause for just a second because of the way I present. I've got a smart board in front of me. I've got a number of things I'm looking at. Heather, at this time, any questions, or did anyone want to make a comment or a question at all?
I don't see any.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks, and again, just feel free to stop me if you like. Okay.
I have one, David.
Thanks. Go ahead, Kay.
You said something about the 4 or 5-star rating on GuideStar, where nonprofits are rated on GuideStar for the information that they receive.
It's more of like a color, and it goes like from bronze to silver to gold. And GuideStar is assessing that based on how much information you've put in to your profile in GuideStar.
And so is it up to us to go to GuideStar and have a file online, a profile? So they're not just getting it from the 990.
That's right. And so there's a number of benchmarks in there, and I would invite everybody to make sure that they go into GuideStar. I believe it's guidestar.org, and see if your nonprofit is in there. And if not, put it in there and make yourself visible, because that might be a place where, it's sort of that passive search where foundations may find you, but it's also a place they may go to verify more about your nonprofit in addition to the information you shared with them.
And is that a free service to update your profile?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Kay. Great question. That helps everybody. This is exactly what we're talking about today. Is really, folks, we've got about 20 of us. This is, I love when we get a chance to do this in person because it's very conversational. And so Sharon's raised her hand. Go ahead, Sharon.
This is all brand new to me. So I wanted to ask you if you think this is a good idea. I'm just doing screen saves for each of the, whiteboard presentation you've been given us. So yeah. Is that okay? I'm just screen saving it. So I think I'm on my second or third screen save.
Yeah, so Sharon, what's even easier is the whole presentation is going to be sent to you afterward.
Oh, it will?
Yeah, and if you want to take notes, that's fantastic. But what will happen afterwards is that Heather will share out the entire PowerPoint presentation, any of the handouts that Zachary Huber, our grant specialist librarian, would like for you to have, and of course our contact information so that you can always follow up.
Well, David, now I know why this is the best library system in the state and the best state for library sharing. Thanks. I will now mute.
So for everyone who joined us late, Sharon is a school media coordinator, and so she's apt to give libraries good reviews, but I did not pay her to say that. And so it's free endorsement, and we'll take that. Honestly, I'm extremely proud of this library system. It's one I grew up with, and I really think it's top level. I've lived different places across the country, had a lot of people, including practitioners, come to our library and say how wonderful it is. I'm a little biased about the main library because this is where I work. If you haven't visited us here, please come into the library, not only to access our fantastic collection of nonprofit and grant resources and our foundation directory online standalone computer, but to see this absolutely gorgeous building. Thanks, Sharon. Yeah, and everything will be sent out to you. So feel free to, don't have to concentrate on that at all if you don't like.
David, building on Kay's question, I put a link into the chat box, and there's 2 articles in there about updating your GuideStar profile. And David from GuideStar Training would tell you that is a critical part of your reach to funders. This is one of the main sources they go to make decisions about whether or not they want to fund your organization.
Thank you so much, Heather. Zachary and I had an update for Candid Midwest, so all of the funding information network, partner libraries, and associations. Because here's the reality is these fins that have FDO, they're not always in public libraries. They can be in academic libraries. They can be in nonprofit institutions. And so I'm lucky, I feel fortunate that we're available at a place that has so many free public hours and has parking for free. For instance, someone mentioned that they were coming from Ottawa County. And so with the Fin network on the Candid website, you can actually see where all the funding information network libraries are or partners and how to access them. In fact, you can put in your zip code. It will tell you where the closest one is for you. And so if you have friends that work in nonprofits and they'd like to access similar resources, please let them know that this is fully available for them. And they can just check their geography and the Fin location at candid.org, and it will tell them where their closest Fin library is. Okay, so we're looking at the FDO product. And again, this comes from the Foundation Center. They did come together with GuideStar, so they're known as Candid. You can see from their presentation that they shared with us, the scope is large. There's over 200,000 funders, over 1 million recipients, and over 4 million different grants are added yearly. So there's a detailed profile for all of the information that goes with the grant makers. I always love that word, like people are making grants in the kitchen. But the grant makers are the foundations, and then you have the recipients, and all of that information is available for you within FDO. It really is a simple interface, and if you've not used it, I think you'll be impressed on how easy it is to use. As we had talked about, the information is updated daily. This is why this is a proprietary database. You can publicly subscribe to this, or like privately, I should say, but it is fairly expensive. So again, we'll talk about ways to access it at this time, but just know that Zachary, as our specialist, and you're about to see this on our website, has a way that you could actually start by filling out a form and saying, this is what I'm interested in. And then Zach will actually get back with you, and he can do some searching with and for you. Sharon, I think you have another question. Okay, down in reactions, you can just lower your hand. That's kind of a silly thing. You think it would lower itself, but you just have to manually lower it. I'll treat it as a high five, and I'm just high fiving her. So, because that was a great question, Sharon. Plus, she gave a lot of love to libraries. That was great. So, as we move on, what are the data sources that they use? And I will give just a pause here for you to take a look at that. I know you're not technically supposed to read from PowerPoint, but I'll just tell you, obviously a lot of websites out there. So they're looking at the foundations. All the annual reports are out there, the published application guidelines, the philanthropic press. And you will see as part of the FDO product that you can see some of the news that is out there, especially about foundations and their current trends, their giving, the news about them, et cetera. Government grants are a big thing, and that we'll see in here. We'll actually have a checkbox in FDO on whether or not you want to search for government grants, especially at the federal level. There's a lot of reporting that's involved with a federal grant, but the give to get, obviously, as federal grants can be very large. They could be a real boon to your organization. There are over 30 different other information sources that the Foundation Directory online, Candid staff comes to find to make this such a rich database. And again, that's why it is a subscription product. It's something that's very proprietary and takes a lot of work to put together. And then, of course, the grant makers or foundations themselves directly report to Candid, because they see the value in making sure that their information, just like we talked about in GuideStar, is updated as much as possible for them. I always look at it this way. If your job was to give away money, you want to have people that want that money and deserve it. So that's where they want recipients and they want grant seekers like yourselves to understand exactly what they're giving and how to apply. Okay. Just checking in with Heather here. Just want to make sure there weren't any questions in the chat or anything I should pause for.
No, we had a couple of people join the group. Patty Robb, as you mentioned, she's with the Thomas M. Wernert Center. I believe Patty is currently an interim director over there. And Sana Murad Friedman is with the Fair Housing Center, Director of Development and Communications.
Hi, Sana. Hi, Patty. Welcome on board. Thanks for what you do. Both incredible organizations. We spent a little time before we hit the record button, since this would go out to everyone, to have some introductions and get to know each other. And perhaps at the end here, if you can stay on board with us, we'll have some additional time to do that after the presentation. Otherwise, welcome on board. So glad to have you. I'm David from the Public Library, here with Heather from the wonderful Center for Nonprofit Resources. So moving through the presentation, of course, these are some really, I think, very obvious things, but I do think they're still critical and I think they can change. So who are you serving, and being very specific on that? Where are they, both in your community, but just maybe even thinking about for foundations that give very locally about the geography you're in. As say, for instance, Heather mentioned, they support people throughout Northwest Ohio, nonprofits, and Southern Michigan. So if you were in Southern Ohio or Northern Michigan, you wouldn't qualify. So you do really want to see, especially for your needs, to define those specifically. Now, I've also seen some occasions, and I'm sure many of you have as well, where your organization could be someone who serves in several different areas. It's not just contained to Northwest Ohio or Southern Michigan. So if you're with a nonprofit that serves in different ways or in different communities, think about that. You can also search the database for those other areas that are giving. I just want to point this out right away. With the foundation directory online, there are many times where I've seen a foundation in Los Angeles County in California giving to someone in Toledo, Ohio. So it's not always tied geographically, but I still think that's a good part of your self-analysis as an organization. And next, what are the services? What are the things that you're doing for your constituents, for the folks that you're serving? Okay, I won't spend too much time on that, but just want to make sure that you see this. And great point brought up earlier by Sharon. All of this will be in your handout afterwards. Okay, the 5 questions that you should look at as you review each prospect. The database is really well set to look at giving limitations, and they're very clear. That's what I love about this database. The grant makers, the foundations are very clear about saying, like, we may not give for religious causes. We only give for this area. We do not support, etc. And so what's wonderful about this database, just like a book, is you have the opportunity to have a table of contents for the grant makers or the foundations. The table of contents will be the same for every record. So you'll know exactly what to find and where to find in each record that we find in Foundation Directory Online. Is my mission or project's goal a priority for this funder? Please don't waste, your time or a foundation's time on that. You really should know if within their top 5 areas of they give, or even top 10, does your organization or the work that you're doing fall within that criteria? If it doesn't, you may want to consider concentrating on those that do meet that best, and we'll look at that. How big are the grants? Another wonderful part about using the advanced search in Foundation Directory Online, and I'm just going to call it FDO for short. So just let me know if there's any point that doesn't make sense. But with FDO, you can go ahead and say, thanks, but no thanks on the $500 grants. My organization's interested in 10,000 or higher. The maximum side is quite funny in the database, the way it's listed. I think it's like, $700 million or something interesting. So we can all wish. Next is the funder support organizations like me. I think that goes in pretty well with the mission. And do I know anyone associated with this funder? It is sometimes making those connections. What I found with an area that we'll look at in the database is that you can uncheck the organizations that aren't currently giving. A lot of times what I've heard Heather Bradley as executive director of the center or others say, like Mary Sabecki from the Need More Fund, is it's not if you talk to the funders, it's how you talk to them. So I think it's interesting to make sure, important, I should say, when you're looking through the FDO results and you're pretty serious about a foundation and a grant opportunity, that just like you would if you were getting ready for a personal interview, that you know the organization in and out, you've taken time to look at their website and understand the RFP and what they're giving, so that you can have a really good set of maybe bullet pointed notes to have that in really, informed conversation with the giver. Okay. Any questions at this time? Keep going through. Feel free, obviously, to interrupt at any time. This is a much more of a conversational tool. And I always want to remind you that Zachary and I are here at the library. Heather's available and has a really great way on their website to request technical assistance that we'll be sure to cover later. So our library, come see us. We're your public library. We've been here both through the building that was on Ontario and Michigan and here at Michigan and Adams for almost 200 years. I've only been here for 100 of them, and I've really enjoyed that. Okay, I just want to see if you're paying attention. Is everyone having fun today? Okay, so, but our library is a public library, and I've mentioned this. Sometimes this resource is available only at an academic institution in the community. That's wonderful, but we all know what it's like to get to a university and try to find parking and access the buildings and all that. So it's really simple to get here to Main Library. If you've not been downtown to our library, please come. We'll greet you at the door. We'll bring you back. Just feel free to make an appointment with Zachary or with me. I can't wait to show you our resources here and get you on the computer. We don't really have a limit on this computer. It's a 1-hour session, but we can expand those sessions for you. And there's a great, easy way for you to save your material, both by email or through flash drive, if you like to bring a drive in with you. I mentioned that we're part of what's called the FIN partnership, the Funding Information Network. So through subscription and partnership, we work with Candid, and so do about 400 other partners. We just celebrated our 40th anniversary. So your Toledo Lucas County Public Library has been a FIN partner for 40 years. And I think that's really exceptional that your library makes it a priority to see nonprofits find success. I'm very proud and pleased to work with this library system. I worked in Raleigh, North Carolina for several years and in Michigan as a library assistant and librarian. And we are very lucky in Ohio to have the type of support that we have and the incredible resources. Next is by subscription. I mentioned this at the top of the conversation. At fdo.org, you will find opportunities for you to be able to have a monthly subscription by the month, yearly, or for 2 years biennially. It's fairly expensive. So between the way that Zachary and I can help you, both through email, through the form I'll show you on our website, through FDO Essential, which exists right now on our website, but is a fairly limited product, and then FDO Professional, which is the robust, fully activated product that's here at the Main Library. We'll always be here to help. Okay, where can you get help with FDO? There's going to be a number of self-serve resources that Zachary will be sending out to you that will show you how you can be served, and you'll also see those on our website. And of course, the person-to-person assistance. We are available and open here at the library. If you feel safe and you're welcome, you can wear your mask. You're welcome to come here. If you'd like to have service at a library other than Main Library and you already know how to use FDO, we can talk to a staff member at that branch library and have them put the credentials in for you. It's a user ID and password that we use. And certainly we can help you again through a Zoom call, through email, through telephone, and we look forward to it. Again, if you came in a little later, Zachary Huber, who is our grant specialist librarian, Zach comes with a lot of experience, both working with an arts-based nonprofit, being a librarian in a public library, but also working with the university to both award grants, but also to write for them. So it's really exciting when you have a librarian who also has a lot of practical experience and has been in the trenches like you have been with a nonprofit. So Zach is just absolutely a superb resource and one of the nicer people you'll meet. So I'm excited for each of you to have some contact with Zachary. Even if you're not sure, this is the great thing. It's not like you're consulting by the hour and at the end of the 59 minutes, we're going to say, well, we're going to have to charge you something for the next hour. It's your public library. It's prepaid, so thank you for paying your taxes, but take advantage of them, everyone. This is your return on investment. And please share with people, anyone who lives in Ohio, works in Ohio, or has property in Ohio can get a free Toledo Lucas County Public Library card or any public library card in Ohio and access our resources. And so I think that's really important to mention because there's some fabulous resources on our website that you can access 24/7. Some of those, hey, I know we're wearing our grants hat on today, that some of those resources will be specifically about nonprofit work and administration, but you have constituents too. And I realize when you guys hang up your nonprofit hat at the end of each day, you may be a mother, a father, an aunt, an uncle, it may be a parent in the sense that, you've got a whole neighborhood around you of people that are trying to do their homework or trying to get a business plan done or other things to accomplish. And so the public library is here to serve you any way you like. We like to think of ourselves as the People's University, the Lifelong Learning Center. So we're here to help, and it's a free resource.
Okay, David, we have a couple of things. So Mandy is asking, how do we schedule a person-to-person appointment?
Wonderful. So what you'll see today as I walk through our personal resource area for grants and nonprofits is how to contact Zachary and how to make an appointment. And I'll have both his direct phone number and I have an easy way that you can click and send him an email as well.
Okay. Also letting you know that Billy Mann, the Director of Resources Development and Communications for Boys and Girls Clubs of Toledo, joined us.
Welcome in.
Yeah, and finally, I recognize some folks who attended the first steps, the nuts and bolts of grant writing, that there's a two webinar series that we do with the library. So I have just shared the link to that on our YouTube channel because we recorded that as well. So you can go back and you can listen to that. And the reason I'm introducing that now is you can already see from David's setup for the use of the FDO, some information or some insights or decisions you're going to need to make about what grants you want to pursue. So he talked about mission creep, like you don't want to shoehorn your organization into a grant and perhaps not even be able to deliver that or manage it or report on it. And I think that first steps is an excellent use of your time if you didn't attend that, to actually look at that before you make the appointment with the library, because they're going to start asking you some really great questions in service for the purpose of being the greatest service to you to be able to identify what you're looking for. So, I think it would behoove you just to do a little bit of review on that so you come armed with some clarity so they can do the best job they can. And finally, he also talked about being in relationship or in conversation with the foundations. If you've met one foundation, you've met one foundation. Every grantor organization operates and feels different. We are really fortunate here that Greater Toledo Community Foundation, you can reach out and schedule time to talk to program officers. Now, do your research first. You want to know what you want to talk to them about, but there are some other funders that don't make themselves available the way our staff does. So just a couple of things, and you can just click on that link and you can watch that video.
Thank you so much, Heather, and thanks for the questions. One of the things I think is important to mention in the baton pass or handshake that works between the library and the Center for Nonprofit Resources is that Heather and the staff that's available there can help with what's called technical assistance. And I would say that could be read as essentially like advice or guidance. The library is here to provide resources. We certainly have had a lot of experiences with nonprofits and can say in our experience, but the technical assistance just goes to a whole nother level. And I mentioned at the top of the session that we're extremely fortunate to have a Center for Nonprofit Resources in our community. Not all large cities like ours do have that, and we're very fortunate, so please take advantage of that resource. Okay, so within the self-serve resources, we're looking at the Foundation Directory Online Quick Guide, help articles. There are a number of web videos that the candidate has put together on YouTube, and those are really fantastic to access. And of course, we've talked about library staff is here to help from a person to person. You can also chat or email with candidate staff, and lots of ways to connect with them. And again, this will all be shared through the handouts and the information that we have, and it'll also be on our website. Okay, so what's next? There are some things coming up with Candid that talk about fundraising planning, the introduction to finding grants. So you can see the different URLs there to go in and self-explore and to get knowledgeable that way. Again, we're always here to help and contextualize it to this community and to what we find to be most useful in the database. For those of you who have not used FDO before, it's a very search engine type of database. So it's very easy to interact with. There's not too many bells and whistles, and it really gets you right to what you need, which is who are the foundations, how have they given, and how do you get access to their information as far as what they have available right now and how do you apply. Yeah, well, thank you on there. I'm going to bypass that. What I will do now is I'm going to come in and just let you folks know that I appreciate Zachary trusting me to have the opportunity to do this. When you do it with both a laptop and a smartboard, it might just take a little time for me to get a new share on the screen, but I think things will work out just fine here. And so what I need to do is just take the different resources here and drag them onto different screens so that each of you can see that. I think right now our screen sharing is paused. And so I'll pause for a moment just to ask if there are any questions at this time.
Where's my little hand? I'm looking for the hand icon.
That's okay, Kay. So at the bottom of your Zoom screen, if you ever want to, it should be under reactions.
Oh yeah, it's
It'll say raise hand, but
yeah.
You can unmute. We're a small enough group. Go ahead.
Couple questions. One is, does Foundation Directory Online also list the different corporate giving programs, not necessarily foundations, private foundations, but different businesses that will give to worthy causes?
Great question. Not as much, but if it's their nonprofit arm, my experience is yes, in that sense. So that you will see if they have a specific 501c3 that gives that way. But there are other resources out there. One of the ones that Zachary shared with me recently was a group it's a donor search page called dsgiving.com. And that dsgiving.com opportunity allows you to find how individuals, how corporations are giving. That may not be giving truly through a 501c3. I do want to ask Heather for just a moment. Heather, are you able to see the screen that I'm showing right now for DS Giving?
Yes.
Wonderful. My colleague had talked about how sometimes giving the PowerPoint, particularly on a different screen, is helpful. But I'm going to stick with this because I actually think this is very easy for me to still see you. And I know that my comrade here, Heather, is checking the chat regularly. And again, please feel free to raise your hand or unmute if you have any questions, or even if you want to share something that we're all a community here together to learn from one another. So I'm going to start with our library website, and I hope that you go there often. It's toledolibrary.org. I mentioned to you earlier that if you want to get a card, it's easy to do so. You can get a library card right here. What this would allow you to do is get a library card. And if you know anyone who would need to do so in a language other than English, we do support that. And here, what you could do is sign up for an e-card. That'll give you access to all of our databases, but it wouldn't give you full access to taking all of our books and materials home and returning them to a branch or main. To do that, just stop into any of our 19 branch libraries or to main library. Okay, so what I'd like to show you first is along the top here, we have different categories, including all of our locations and their hours, the programs that we do, like today's and others, the services that we offer, and a number of other areas. What I'd like to do first is start by clicking on services here, and you can see we have quite a few. One of the areas here for economic success is both business support and grant and nonprofit support. I will mention job search assistance as well. We love working with different partners and with you directly if you have a career pursuit or you're changing gears or you just need help. And there are so many great providers in Lucas County that'll help people with job and career assistance. So I was at ToledoLibrary.org. I clicked on services and I'm choosing grant and nonprofit support. Notice up top here, it changes the website address to ToledoLibrary.org/grants-assistance. If you'd like to save that, you could save it that way and you'll just go directly to that page. Okay. So as I'm on this page and I scroll down here, it's going to welcome you to how you can find funding, start a nonprofit, research prospective donors, and develop a strategic or fundraising plan. Need help getting started? Here's our email address. This number here goes directly to my colleague, Zachary. So someone said, hey, how is it that I set up an appointment? It's just that easy. In the slides that will be sent to you, we'll have Zachary's full contact information, and you can always call the public library and just ask for Zachary Huber as well. Okay. Now, this is something that Zachary added recently, and I'm really glad he did, because within the pandemic, particularly when we were only open for grab and go and computer use by appointment, you couldn't get access to everything that FDO offers. So I just really want to make sure everybody notices down here. It says we can do a personalized grants search for you. Simply complete this form and your results will be emailed back to you. When you click on this form, you can see it's just going to ask you for a few pieces of information about who you are, what type of information you're looking for, and how to contact you, and then submit it. And Zach will be back in touch with you. Okay. Really simple, and that should be a great way for you to get your questions started. And Zach, for not only to use his expertise in the database, but to also help you along with the thought processes that you're having. There's nothing better, I think, than working with a professional librarian who's going to ask you open and close-ended questions to help you best define what your needs are, as we discussed in the presentation PowerPoint. And finally, over here for this first part, sign up for our grants newsletter. Please sign up for Zach's newsletter. He sends it out monthly. He'll be telling you about new opportunities that are in the area, if there's something happening federally that's pandemic related that you might qualify for, and certainly telling you about our resources and the programming that we have coming up. Next, in this area, you can see the grant funding resources that we have, and there's local resources. Certainly can't help but see the Center for Nonprofits, so we're going to link right to them. If you're not familiar with the AFP or the Association of Fundraising Professionals, it's a great way, if your role is, or to share with someone whose role is the development side, to do the fundraising. Great way to get together with other professionals in Northwest Ohio to understand and be collegial with others who are trying to do this work. Okay. Of course, there's the Greater Toledo Community Foundation as well. Always a great resource, an incredible giver in our community, and the agency that funds the Center for Nonprofit Resources. You can see there's information on starting and managing a nonprofit. There's also funding resources here that will go along with what we've been talking about today, but are a little different than the foundation directory online. Notice here that it does say grants to individuals by Candid. There is a specific side product of the FDO that is for giving to individuals. It could be an educator doing research. It could be a playwright. It could be a documentarian who's shooting a film. And there are ways that individuals can find grant funding as well. It tends to be a little different than your traditional, 501c3 getting funded, because of course it's coming to an individual. And then we have the private funding as well here too. One of the resources that Zachary found earlier in 2020 that he is very excited about, and actually has an active relationship with the person who makes this resource available, is what's called grantmakers.io. It's frankly very similar to what GuideStar and Foundation Directory Online offers. The main difference, it's completely free. So you can use grantmakers.io as much as you like to find a profile, to look and find what grants are out there. and to be able to go through and look at that type of information. Will it be as comprehensive and as current as what's available in FDO? Maybe, but likely not. But being a free resource and one that you might want to search when time allows, it's a fantastic resource rather. Any questions about that area of the webpage? Okay, excellent. We'll keep moving down here. And
Sorry, I didn't have my mic on. I'm sorry. There's a comment and a question,
well, please.
an offer and a question. So Janelle Johnson of Leadership Toledo says, "Hey, I'm on the board of AFP Northwest Ohio. If
Thank
you
you.
want more info, let's connect." So you can reach out to Danielle. And Tammy Matthews is asking, "Do you have to be a Lucas County resident to obtain a library card?"
No. And I'm sorry, I'm not sure if Tammy was on when I mentioned if you live in the state of Ohio, if you work in the state of Ohio, or you own property in Ohio, you can not only get a free library card from Toledo Lucas County Public Library, but any other library in Ohio. Now, some people would say to me, "Now, David, hey, what gives? Why would I want to take books out from Cincinnati or Columbus and have to return them there?" Well, you might not, but they have databases too. Some that might be similar to the ones we have, because there are shared Ohio databases through a group called Ohio Public Library Information Network. But libraries like ours in Lucas County, we have some databases that just we subscribe to that other libraries don't. And then we have some databases where you only get so many uses. We have something that I hope to mention at the end of the session called Hoopla, where you get so many free materials per month, and then you have to wait for the next month. Well, if you have a card for different libraries, you may be able to multiply that, into exponential use. Okay. Does that answer your question, Tammy?
Yep, she says, "Thank you. I must have missed that." Yep.
No problem at all. It's
Trying to
totally fine.
multitask. Sorry. Thanks, David.
Oh, it's no problem at all. I'm glad to repeat at any time, but I'm super excited about that because students who are working in the area or living in the area, people who live in different places in Ohio, it's great to be able to get a public library card. So thank you for that. Moving forward, you'll see different programs that we have. Many times it'll also go along with our for-profit programs that we have. Hey, look at that. Diving deeper into library resources, that's us. And so you'll see the grants programs here, but you'll also see our business programs. Zachary is also one of our business specialists, along with my colleague Linda Fairweather. If you find someone who's trying to determine LLC, 501c3, not sure, business or nonprofit, please contact us. We have a number of ways, including I mentioned to you that Candid has a flow chart. And within that flow chart, it asks you, might you be thinking that you'll serve as a for-profit instead of a nonprofit? And there's different routes you can go then to understand the pros and cons of that. So that most people know, I think that when I've been part of that conversation, one of the things that I see in that is that some folks realize that they may have a bit more independence in being a for-profit sole proprietor LLC, et cetera, but they don't have the opportunity typically to go for grant funding. Certainly treating that 501c3, there are a number of steps there to have a board, to conduct yourself in a certain way, to renew each year, but down the road with the success, structure in place where you've had that resume, you may very well qualify as a 501c3 for that grant funding. Move down here and forgive me, my mouse is a little troubling. So here are some of our research tools. Did want to point out a couple of those. One of them is right here. And I'm gonna move on that. This resource here is called Business Book Summaries, and it's really exciting because each of you are very busy. In fact, you're busy to tune in today, so thank you for being here. And even within that, you're Tammy saying, "I'm multitasking." Yeah, it'd be nice that everyone could just give their concentration to what's before them, but I know everyone's busy. Because you're busy, this is an outstanding resource where you can look at different books that are out there about leadership, about development, about management, about personal growth, about teams and social responsibility. So many things that for a nonprofit and for-profit would be helpful, but you don't have time to read 200-page books. So how Business Book Summaries helps you is it allows you to get into this resource and look at both PDF and audio summaries of business-related books. I've searched investing in here. I know there's lots of different things around nonprofit assistance. And I do want to point out down here that, the library is always looking to provide resources, both in English, but also in other world languages. So in this case, French, German, Spanish, and Chinese access to these resources. And you just can simply search by subject. You could do an advanced search, or you can just browse through the different categories. And that's called the Business Book Summaries. And it's a great way to stay current, to understand the trends, to be a proactive leader, and also to be able to help others. Maybe someone's really having a frustration in your organization, a board member, someone that you serve with, through a religious organization or otherwise, and you could really help them find some resources that will give them some food for thought. And of course, we're a library, so we're always excited about that lifelong learning through those types of resources. Okay. Going back here and scrolling down, there's the Foundation Directory online. So what's going to happen right now is within the pandemic, Candid has given us access to what's called FDO Essential. You will be able to search until March 25th. So I just want to be really specific about that. You have a week from today where Foundation Directory Online Essential is available 24/7 whenever you click on Access Now. So let's just remember that we went into ToledoLibrary.org. We went into services and chose nonprofits, nonprofit and grant assistance. And down the way, we found here Foundation Directory Online. The other way we could have done that is to go to our research page here and either search under, click here at research and either choose under business and investments or research tools A to Z. Notice the URL up here changes from the one that we have here of grants-assistance to just ToledoLibrary.org/research. That may help you if you're using some of these other tools for education or other areas. That said, if I click on research tools A to Z, what will load up for me is an alphabetical list of all of our databases. And all I have to do is simply choose F and come down here to Foundation Directory Online. When I do that and I enter in that database, it is going to take me into the database here, but I want you to recognize up top here where it says Essential. Okay, what that means is as we start to search, it'll give you some limited information, but it will not give you everything that professional offers. And so 2 ways around that: fill out the form that Zachary has on the grants page here, or come on into our public library here at Maine, or let us know if you'd like to go to a branch and we can serve you that way. Outside of that though, really the best way to get to the full product is to come to the library and or to work with Zach again by telephone, email, Zoom call, and we can run some results for you. Okay, so that's the Foundation Directory Online. Gale Legal Forms is a free legal forms database. There's nothing more frustrating when you're trying to help someone access free legal forms and they find a template, they get all the way into maybe even filling it out, and all of a sudden you hit a paywall. It's not free, or it's not what you hope for. It's a form that's stuck in a template that doesn't work for you. What's wonderful about Gale Cengage, a company in the Detroit area, is their database allows you to look up all different types of forms that may help you both as a nonprofit provider, but also as an individual. And most of them are in Microsoft Word, so you can actually edit them any way you want and save them. What's wonderful about that is you've customized it. What's even better about it is you can go back later and change how it reads if you have different needs at that time. You can understand especially how that might help someone for work they're doing, for contract, for a purchase agreement, obviously in some cases with businesses, things like landlord agreement forms, landlord, tenant, etc. So I want to let you know about Gale Legal Forms. Okay, go ahead and unmute.
You just hit on something I have a question of. On the legal forms, I would assume they have landlord tenant.
Exactly. Templates? Landlord tenant, things like advanced directives. So
does the library ever offer, in addition to the form, any type of free legal advice? or free legal advice for nonprofits?
So in the sense that we do have an Ask an Attorney program that's really much more around intellectual property. So that's copyright, trademark, and patents. We do have every first Thursday of the month a program called Ask an Attorney. We did just do one on housing with ABLE, the Advocates for Basic Legal Equality. But Kay, the maybe best way to differentiate ourselves from some of the practitioners, like I mentioned with Heather and them giving technical assistance. Your public librarians will do their very best to never give any advice, but we will try to connect you to the professionals or do programming that allows you to learn from the folks that can.
Okay.
Yes, so the center enjoys a wonderful collaboration with the Toledo Bar Association, and we do legal programming specifically for nonprofits on a variety of topics. There's some out there in the YouTube. Actually, the most viewed video that we've ever had that we published was around employer rights to demand vaccines, to make them a requirement. So we're always looking for topics that are of interest to nonprofits. So if you ever want to reach out to me, Heather at c4mpr.org, you can always find me, and suggest a topic. We are always looking to, we have very, very generous local attorneys who on pro bono opportunities offer all of this at no cost. So just reach out to me if you have a specific nonprofit legal related question.
Got it.
Okay, thanks, Kay, for your question. And so excited to be able to provide a legal forms database that has so much to offer, but doesn't hit a paywall, and that's very easy to use. I'm not sure if you're familiar with lynda.com. It's an incredible resource. Lynda.com is a part of LinkedIn. And what's neat is that Lynda offers a platform of over 3,000 courses. So think about a time that maybe you looked at YouTube or another resource to learn something. Now think that this is from your top professionals and it's all been vetted out. And when you take a course, you'll have a completion certificate afterwards that you can actually update to your LinkedIn page. You can upload to it. And so there's everything in lynda.com, from learning Microsoft Office to learning different other computer applications, learning how to be a good manager, learning QuickBooks. You know, I know Zachary said, boy, that'd be a great example to share with people. Everybody, you know, needs to know how to understand finances better for their nonprofit or their business. So that's lynda.com. For brevity today, I won't go into all of these databases, but I want to let you know they're here. Again, you'll receive the recording of today, but most importantly, we're here to serve you. So as you experiment and work through these databases to see what they have in them, we're right here to help you to understand exactly everything that's in them, how to use them in an advanced way. Okay. One of the areas that Zachary's been working on to help nonprofits that we're very currently, active in helping for-profits with is doing research on both opportunities out there, but sometimes who else is like you. And so in the business world, competitive intelligence. So both Mergent Intellect and what's called Reference USA or Reference Solutions are databases where you can find out more information about businesses or nonprofit organizations out there, but you can also find out more about people. And this is another frustration I think people have had in the internet era, where you'll go on to find information about especially people, and it'll take you to some strange website where all of a sudden you feel like a private investigator and you're thinking they're trying to tell you they have court records and all of this. Like, I just want to know where the person lives. I just want to know information on them. And from a business perspective, be able to search the whole United States, or just say, give me every organization or business that does something in a specific range of geography. For Mergent Intellect and for Reference USA, it allows you to go in and have opportunities to do basically prospect research. You can look at the consumer lifestyles of certain people, and basically, if you've ever seen one of those ads that said, would you like to win a free iPad, or do you want to take this magazine subscription? You're sharing your information with people in a way that gets sold. So love or hate it, that information gets into databases like this, and you can actually go in and find, let's just say, for instance, your organization was going to do a fundraiser. So I'm going to go into Reference USA to show you what it looks like. Again, Reference USA or Reference Solutions is a type of database that will help you find businesses, both in US and Canada, the ones that are newest in your community, all the white pages, both in US and Canada, people who are new to your area, and then to find out more about the people in your area. So let's just say I go into the US Consumers and Lifestyles module of Reference USA. We've called it that for almost 20 years. They've changed their name up a little bit, but Reference Solutions, Reference USA. This will take you into a quick search. This will allow you to choose different types of lifestyle categories, and you certainly can go into an advanced search. As I've stated before, I know we're about an hour or more in here. If you have any questions or comments, please just let Heather know in the chat box or feel free to unmute. Heather, just thinking if we need at some point, we certainly could take a couple-minute break as well. When you get into the U.S. Consumers Lifestyles database, I can come here geographically, either from a map that I can create the borders for, all the way down to specific addresses and neighborhoods. But if I put in a zip code, and let's just say for today's case, I'm going to put in something in the West Toledo area here, say like Old Orchard, 43606 by the university. Okay, then let's say down here, I wanted to start to look at certain consumer things that are respective of that demographic. I certainly could do that. I could look at home values, I could look at gender, I could look at a lot of different things. So it really does narrow down into there. But I can also look at lifestyles. And so let's just say that, for instance, and I just saw this with our friends over at the Exchange Club, they had a fundraiser. And in their fundraiser, it was a wine tasting. So I could say, could you please tell me anybody who specifically decided that they want to, they've subscribed to a magazine about wine. They've otherwise shared with a vendor that they like wine. And so then what I can do is I can update that count and I can find the 1,713 people who have filled out something and live in 43606 that say they like wine. And what I could do very easily is I could turn this into a mailing list, the way that maybe people use different private services out there to send out mailings. Well, I'm not sending this to someone who doesn't like wine. I've associated that these folks already have said they like wine. So if I'm doing something in the 43606 area post-pandemic or safely, then I could identify the people here who may be interested in knowing about the wine tasting fundraiser that our organization is doing. About that. Okay, so you can see the power in doing that. There's several ways to do it and lots of different interests. But again, I mean, if you're prospect researching and you might follow up with individuals that are specifically not only interested in certain things, but maybe are, maybe you're marketing to women. Maybe you're marketing to someone of a specific age or of a certain income level. There are lots of different ways to use this database. Some of it may be just understanding your community better and the service area that you are in and that you do your work in. So we wouldn't always necessarily be fundraising or prospect researching. There's lots of information here to take advantage of. I want to pause for a second because I understand that people could get kind of excited about this or have follow-up questions. Anybody have a question about Reference USA or the type of information that it can provide for your nonprofit or to you individually? Wonderful. If you do.
The thing that's specific to grants that jumps for me is oftentimes there's a necessity to make a case for need. So whether you're talking about income or food insecurity or housing insecurity or children or daycare or whatever your thing is, I'm always amazed at the amount of information and research that people can conduct through your subscriptions, really with little time and little effort. It's pretty stunning what you guys have secured at the library.
And Heather, thank you for saying that. The return on investment is huge. I mean, the UT did a study not too long ago of our public library and showed specifically for Toledo, I think it was close to 3 to 1. The return on investment for every dollar you put in, you get 3 back. And so I think that's impressive. I think, but again, we talked at the front of the conversation, it's important for you to utilize these resources because they would privately be very expensive for you to access. And we all share together so that we can use our tax dollars to help individuals, for-profits, nonprofits. And to that level, I've got a couple more here to show you before we jump into FDO. This one's called the Small Business Reference Center. It certainly is more of a small business resource. That said, you may be familiar in our books or from other, both at bookstores or other libraries, that there is a publisher called NOLO, N-O-L-O, and they're basically a do-it-yourself legal guide book. So it's sort of like if you think about the dummies guides that are out there for all kinds of different things and those black and yellow covers, you can see sort of the trademark look of the NOLO books. And I want to just show you as we look down here, working for yourself. There may be several grant writers that are 1099s, a nonprofit's tax guide, a nonprofit meetings, minutes, and records book. And there will be several guides here where the full book in its full form with all of its pages and forms and all of that will be electronically available for you 24/7 right here on our website. And again, used a lot by businesses and has some great information about break-even analysis, all kinds of other information on the industry that you're getting into. But we do see some crossover into nonprofit assistance here, and just want to make sure you're aware of EBSCO's Small Business Reference Center. Okay. Finally, as far as our databases are concerned for today, so that I can concentrate the rest of the time onto what we'll be looking at for the Foundation Directory Online product, is I'm able to go into, from the research tools, into the specific database that is called the Gale Business Plan Builder. It's under Small Business Builder in our website. Notice here, what will happen is you'll always use your library card and 4-digit PIN to get into our databases outside the library. And then this database, Gale Business Plan Builder, will ask you to create your own user ID and password. When you do that, think about something perhaps, especially if you're working with your colleagues, that could be shared with them. Because what's happening here is you could get in together and look at your plan. So yes, there is a for-profit plan here as well, and that would allow an entrepreneur to start to build out their ideation and how they're going to create their for-profit business. But notice up top here, it says nonprofit. And when I do, I have a number of different things. I have a founder profile. Why do you want to start a nonprofit? What do I need to know how to do? What do I love to do? And what it's going to do, and I love that at the top of the conversation when we introduced ourselves, someone said, I'm trying to figure out if starting a nonprofit's the right way to go. Okay, once you have, here's Mission Canvas. Here's other ways to think about how your nonprofit's going to build, how you're going to look at expenses, how you're going to look at your bylaws and strategic planning, and what are your financial projections? What are the things that you're thinking about to make sure that you have a successful nonprofit? What's neat about this whole area here is there's just so much to guide you through the dashboard, but there's also areas that you can see and keep track of different things. So you can go in and you can record your donations here. So if I go into fundraising here and go into donations, I stored one. I got a donation from the Greater Toledo Community Foundation, and I could go in here and edit it and get more information on what type of donation that I received from them. And within here, you'll see when I go into optional here, I can store all of their information in there that I want. And then that will be in my dashboard. I will be able to keep track of the donations that I've received. And that might be a really nice record keeper for you electronically to be able to save and to work within one point of reference for your dashboard for your nonprofit. And that's called the Small Business Builder through Gale. Also, again, great for profits as well. So always hope that you have information to share with your colleagues who might be deciding either way or are in business and are looking for a tool like this that could be helpful for them.
So David, the hope is always that a nonprofit grows. You know, the dream is to have bigger impact. So at some point, I'm assuming a nonprofit would need to move beyond this dashboard, which is really interesting. Is there an ability to export the data that you enter if you choose to use a different platform?
You should be able to certainly save it And I'm going to move my box here so you can see over here where it says download and email here in the top right corner.
But it doesn't download to a spreadsheet?
It's a good question. It's going to depend on which parts you're working on. And when you have, and let's just go into there. I'm sorry, I'm losing my mouse.
So I was thinking about the great data that you just showed that they could capture for like the gifts, right? And then let's say they buy a donor software program. Yeah, it would just be interesting if they can offload it into a spreadsheet and upload it into a new platform when they're big enough.
Yep, on here you can see PDF and DocX or none. Certainly in the Reference USA and the Mergent and Elect databases, all of those are set up for Excel spreadsheet to be able to download into spreadsheet format and to edit. And particularly when we talked about finding those people for the fundraiser, my colleague Zachary can talk to you about how to actually mail merge that information and make those into mailing lists.
Okay,
Thanks, Heather. Great question there. And Kay, go ahead. Feel free to unmute.
I was looking for some type of a tool to track the grants that I was researching, to track the contacts, how I had kept in touch with them, what their guidelines, their everything. And I found a really cool free program online. They have paid versions, but I'm starting with the free one. It's called airtable.com. And you log in, and they have all these templates already made for every kind of industry. And they had one called the Grant Builder. So I used their template, and it didn't take long to learn the program, but it combines spreadsheets and databases. You can import a document, you can export your information, and the staff has been really helpful, and it's free, at least the version that I'm using. So it's
Thanks so much for sharing, Kay. If you'd be willing to put the name of that, and maybe even if you know the URL in the chat box, that'd be exceptional.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and so one of the things that Heather said that I think is important is capacity. If you have a very small nonprofit and you don't have the ability to pay for software or find something like Kay did that might be free at a certain basic level, then you may find some resources like this helpful. What I find in them, even if it's not for basically record keeping, is the whole idea with the ideation here in your mission canvas. If you've ever heard of lean canvas or model canvas, is it's looking at what are you doing, why are you doing it, what are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, or what's called a SWOT analysis, and really understanding inside and out why your nonprofit needs to exist in this community and how it's going to be sustainable. There's something that Heather's talked about and actually published white papers on from the center showing a lot of duplication in this community of nonprofits. So you really want to make sure that your lane is your lane and you can be successful in it. Good question, Kay, and thanks for sharing that resource.
That's great.
Okay, so next I'm going to go into our database, which is the Foundation Directory Online Database. And I'm going to close the advanced search and filters so you see exactly what it looks like. I want to again note right up top here that it says professional on the left side here, and that's what you would see when you were here in the library or if you subscribe to that product. I would just tell you, yesterday I was just curious, like what if you just wanted a 1-month subscription? And I think it was like $199 for a 30-day, 1-month subscription. Can your nonprofit afford that? Would that give you the time is money and an opportunity to use that at your discretion when you want to from home or office for a month? Yes, it would. But we do have it here at the main library. And again, with the form that I showed you here at the Grant and Nonprofit page, that you're able to go right in as I scroll up here and set up a time to talk to Zachary or fill out the form of what you're looking for and have Zach assist you that way. So jumping right into FDO.
It might be helpful to let people understand. Can you explain why the essential is going away at the end of March?
Sure. So on March 25th, what's going to happen is that instead of just having access to Essential, you will be able to click in here, and then it's going to give you access that you fill out for 24 hours once a month. And the thought process here is from Candid is that they're having some trouble with bots and other things getting in and sharing out the database. So that's not just the communities that they serve using it. So it's a protective measure on their side. But I want to get back to the idea that when you go into Essential, you will find some primary information, but you're not going to find the breadth of what's in the professional product. And it's because it's a proprietary product through subscription, both to the Funding Information Network partners, but also through private subscription. This is how they pay to put together this incredible database. And so I hope that's Heather, what you were,
Well, actually, I learned something then. I thought it was going to go away at the end of the month because they made it free to support during COVID, but it was never intended. My understanding was it was never intended that we could look at essentials forever.
Yeah, it's, I want to be very clear with each of you and not spend too much time on this, but we are advanced in our service here at the main library and through Lucas County, a lot more than other libraries in the United States. There was a librarian yesterday that said you get a half hour at a stand-up computer without a seat, and then you have to leave. So, the expectation that you could get into a public library right now and have a comfortable session in FDO professional is difficult or impossible in some libraries that still aren't open to the public. They simply have what's called basically like pick up or grab and go. So we do have that opportunity. I've never been part of a session that had so many questions and complaints or comments in the chat box. There was like 20 or 30. So there are people who are kind of frustrated because they want to provide full service. And last time I checked, we are in the pandemic. So, with all due respect, while we're still in the pandemic, it would be excellent to still have full access. This has been wonderful, though, and we've been very lucky that the candidate has allowed the FDO essential product to be accessed electronically. It's just that we're still in the thick of it in so many communities. And so, with that said, we do have the professional product, and we're glad to help you at Maine at a branch or have Zachary help you through that. Looking at the database, I want to mention something we talked about earlier right away, and you'll see in the checkbox here, it says include U.S. federal funders or not. I always feel like it's a yes and or an or. Go ahead and include them if you want to see what they're offering, but know that if you're not set up to have the reporting requirements, you don't have the capacity to keep up with a federal grant, that you can certainly look at them and rule them out later, but why not start by looking at them? You can see the examples in this box. For instance, a ballet school in New York City, a food pantry in Dallas. So you certainly can just type in something like arts education in Ohio. That's an example that Zachary and I have looked at. And you can just simply do a search. Notice when you do, you'll see the results here of art education, performing arts education, ballet, orchestral music, curriculum development. So there may be things that come out of just a basic search that aren't exactly what you were looking for. If arts education was, but say ballet is not, you can just simply X those out and you'll see that they'll go away from your search. Okay, so there is an easy way, basically from the front page, to do a search that is not necessarily a formal advanced search. So you can just come in here and do a simple search. However, almost, I would think 99 times out of 100, you'll want to drop down these advanced search and filters. So the first time you do that, you're going to see a subject area for funding. Within that subject area, you're going to see some drop downs. They call it parents and children. We could think of it as headings and subheadings. And as you start to search, so let's say I put in the word science, I will start to see some things that will drop down that might cover what I was looking for. Okay, and you can choose them from the subject area here. Okay, if I chose science museums, and let's just say, for instance, I also wanted to do something around the environment, and I choose environmental education. Notice that up here at subject area, the match any, which because I only had one subject, can now be match all. So if I'm okay to have foundations that support science museums and environmental education, great. But if I want to make sure it matches both, I'm going to click on match all there. The geographic focus is what we spoke about earlier, that if you have a specific area where the funding will be used, you can put that in. This is an area where I would say, feel free to put in Ohio, but also search it without Ohio. When you save your records, you can save them in a way that you could just name it. Specific criteria, Ohio, specific criteria, United States. There are large funders throughout our country who give to all areas of geography. So you don't want to necessarily narrow yourself into just Ohio, but maybe at first you do want to see, hey, I just want to concentrate who's local to me, who's in my community. Next is the population served. And as you look at that, you can see we're going to go into age groups, ethnic and racial groups, family relationships, all these different categories. For instance, we were talking earlier about different types of folks who might receive support, and something that came up was people who maybe are justice involved or going into reentry. And so notice that here's incarcerated people, here's ex-offenders. So I can go right in there and search for very specific population groups that I want to search for. If you leave it empty, it'll search for all of them. And again, you can always look at that list and then narrow down from there. If I want to serve veterans, I could say serve veterans or unemployed people. Lots of ways to search those populations. Okay, let's say in this case, I knew that we're working with the Science Museum. Maybe we're looking specifically to serve children and youth. So I'll stick with that for now. And again, just stop me if you have any questions here. As far as this next part here, an organization's name, their location, or who's who, those would be great ways to use this as a research function to maybe look at another organization or a grant maker that you're interested in to see a location of a grant maker or to see who serves in that organization. Maybe you heard of someone that's really prominent or active within a specific organization or a certain field. You can search for them here. After we've done that, we can simply do a search here, or I can click here where it says additional filters. What that allows us to do it includes several things. First is the support strategy. We do know that some foundations do give for continuing or general support, but many of them may be specific to project-based work. So as I come down here, it might be a specific program or project that you're working on. It might be for research. It might not be just for general support. In fact, it rarely is. So with that, you can choose that support strategy, or you can just simply leave it blank. The transaction type, there may be specific ways in which that foundation gives, including to individuals. People like to say cash is king. So in that case, if you wanted to see specifically how a foundation is going to give, great. If you want to just find that out in their individual records and say, hey, beggars can't be choosers, I'd like to see how they give, you can stick with that. The type of organization, my colleague Zachary and I have talked about this, other than maybe if your nonprofit had some exclusion or some limitation on how you can receive money, really, again, not necessarily something that you want to filter. But I want to remind people, there are universities, there are researchers, and all other types of people that use this database, and they're not looking for funding. They're just looking to identify who is giving money. So this is a pretty great database for a lot of reasons. I mentioned earlier in the grant amount that you certainly can move this. You can see the second I start to move it, it gets into the hundreds of billions of dollars. So that's not necessarily as effective there. Or you could go for that $10 billion grant over here. What you'd be looking at is, notice that when I come down underneath, I can click into the box and I can put a minimum amount. So if you don't want a $750 grant, if you'd like 5,000 and up, you can go ahead and change that right underneath in the boxes here. The other thing you can do is you can change so you can see what was their pattern or patterns of giving during a certain period of time. And as I move that circle, you can see in the box on the bottom left there next to years, it changes for what their giving is. So, it could be an organization that's, say, the Bill Gates Foundation, maybe the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, they've given the same way for decades. But if you want to just get a better feel of how they've given, say, in the last 5 or 10 years, you can go ahead and narrow it down that way. When you do, the results that you see as far as how much and have they funded and in what way will move around with this change here. Okay, this keyword area here, and notice it says search for a specific term across all of FDO. What I want to point out is that I could put something in this box that said something like drug abuse or drug addiction, but it might not search for opioids. If I want to, I can search down here in keyword if I don't see something match as a subject area. Because it's searching all the narratives of the foundations and the recipients, I can find some terms where maybe drug addiction or heroin is a much more important or used word that's more popular, and opioids isn't, but I can still search here for different ways to do that. Lastly is the EIN number. Again, I guess unless you really wanted to, if you knew the EIN for yourself or for another organization and you want to search for them, that one is not something that typically would be used. So let's go ahead and do a search. Okay. What we're going to find is up top here, it's going to tell you what you searched for. When you download the records, and I'll show you what that looks like soon, you will get that information in your download. I will say sometimes though, when I'm in a page like this, if I brought a flash drive and I'm here at main library, I may go ahead and just screenshot that so I can remember what box did I put that in. Was that the subject or the population? How did I narrow it by years? Most of it will be obvious up here, but if you were to send an assistant or a volunteer or someone, it might just be helpful for them to see what's on the screen there. You can do a control print screen. You could take your phone out and take a picture with your camera, however you like, but that might be a nice way to look at that. Okay. With that said, notice that now I'm going to get a list of a number of things. I'm going to get 120 grant makers here. I'm going to, and I'll show you right now, I've clicked into the non-professional essentials here, and you can see what it's already asking me to do is upgrade my database. And so I thought I was looking at pro, and in fact, when I go up top here, no, look at that, it switched me into essential. So that's kind of funny. So what you'll find me do pretty quickly here is I'm going to go into my FDO page, now it's very interesting. Now it's just giving me essential. So it's very odd. Excuse me for just a second. I'm going to make sure that.
So we do have a question that I can give some help on.
Go ahead, please.
So Danielle is asking, I've used this search during shutdown and had come across some grants that say, quote, by invitation only, end quote. Is this where GuideStar comes into play? Of course, we want to hear what David has to say, but just an FYI, that previous webinar that I talked about where Zach and one of the program officers, Artisha Lawson, is giving the presentation. I think it was the very last question before that webinar ended, they give their interpretations on how to deal with or potentially get onto lists for by invitation only. So I won't pretend to be the expert, but I can point you to that segment of the webinar. But David, do you have any insight to offer around by invitation onlys?
I'm sorry, I don't know enough about that, but I would be more than happy to have Zachary talk to you further about that.
So, yeah, you can either call Zachary or you can look at that webinar link on YouTube that's in the chat. It's also on our website.
Thank you for that, Heather. Appreciate it. And as far as it goes with the idea of how the Foundation Directory Online works with GuideStar, it's pretty light at this time, but we are seeing some incorporation, including what we talked about with the sort of the seal of the bronze, silver, gold. And from that, we do have a number of questions, including might there be some discounts for public libraries so that we could have the full GuideStar as well. The grantmakers.io did want to mention that that's a nice resource there. But on the other part, I think it'd be better that my colleague Zachary help you further with that. Okay, so I just want to go back down here. I'm just going to make a slight adjustment here now that I'm back into the Pro product and just do say like the last 10 years. When I do my search here, I'm going to come down here. I'm going to see 15,000 foundations who have provided over 110,000 grants to 11,755 recipients. And then there's their 990s there that are available to look through. Okay, with that, I want to point out that certainly that's a large list. And so we can start with that, knowing that there's lots of ways to filter that. Ways that we can go in to start, I would recommend we look at the grant makers themselves first, who provide grants to that area. And you can just click right into there where it says, look at view all of the grant makers. Okay, So I'm just going to slightly adjust the screen here so I can get in there. I'm going to click on View All. Okay. And when I do that and I scroll down here, you are going to see the full list. And that list is ranked. In other words, it's prioritized from the beginning on the grant count. So you can see that right up here where my cursor is. The first one will have 5,122 different grants that they have given in that time period. You also see the RFPs that we had talked about, that if there's an active request for proposal or offer out there to write and apply for a grant, that they may be listed here. Okay. That said, I want to point out something right here, and it's exclude grant makers not accepting applications. I mentioned it a little bit earlier in the presentation, but I want to point out that if you have the capacity in your organization to make relationships with foundations that aren't currently accepting applications, then you can find out through here how to contact them, maybe how to connect with them on LinkedIn, and start to build a communication relationship with them about ways in which your organization might be a great fit for the giving that they have and that they do. That said, if you think, hey, I really just want to concentrate for the capacity our organization has to work with those that are accepting applications at this time, notice how this number up top here of 15,318, watch how it changes when I click exclude. It usually halves it or more, and now you can see we're down to 5,159. Okay, so that's a good thing. That might save you a little bit of time there. And so as we do that, I want to take a look here as we look at the grant count, the amount funded, the total giving, their total assets, and where they're from. With any of these, I can hover over them and it will give me a little bit of information about who they are, who their priorities are, and what they do. At any time with those, I can click into them and find out all of the information. And we're going to do that in just a moment. But as we look at the ranking here, I want to take a look at their total giving. You can have a large foundation that gives in so many different ways, but isn't specifically giving to environmental education for science museums, science centers. But here where it says amount funded, notice if I can get that to stick. Amount funded based on the search criteria. So exactly how you searched is how that's coming up. So they may give 2,425 grants, but what if only 10 of them are to my criteria? So what I can do here is I can click on amount funded and it will completely re-rank it and now show me for science museums and environmental education that this is how they've been funded. Over $209 million has come from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, EPA. And I can go down from there. Okay, we can see that this Moody Foundation out of Galveston, Texas, has funded over $107 million to that type of those advances. So I'm going to click on the Moody Foundation, and I mentioned before, as you see the swinging menu over here, every single foundation that you see in this database will have the same table of contents, and here they come. Okay, what are their grants? What are they interested in funding? More about them. Other funders that might either be in similar patterns of giving or geographically near them. How do I apply? And what are their giving limitations? What are their financials? Who might work there that I could connect with? What news or communications have they put out recently? And how do I contact them? And what you'll find is many times a very specific URL that doesn't go to more about us. It goes right to the specific page about what grants are available and how do you apply. Okay, so this is the Moody Foundation. So what I can do is scroll down. Here's their website address. What's being funded? And you can see as I click on this, it'll hover over it. It will tell me how much they give in each area. And as I go down here, I can see environments up there. I can see educations there. So I can have a pretty good feel that within the top 5 of their giving, they're doing something like a science museum and the environment. If I want to, I can click into that and it will give me even more information within that education. Early childhood education, educational services, higher education, etc. Okay, so you could see by doing that, it allowed me to get more information just by going through and looking at that through there. Okay, let's go back to grants and to the view also. I can go in from there. I'm just going to back up a moment. Sorry about that. I can see where do they give? Where is the money going? And as you can see, I scroll over here. This is one where it doesn't look like a lot of giving in Ohio has happened. So we'll make sure when we look at the giving limitations, obviously they're giving in a big way, as we can see down by this shaded chart here in Texas. How big are the grants? In other words, what's the typical size of the grants? And then we can come down with some more detail. Who have they given to and in what way? As we scroll down past there, here are their funding interests, the population groups. This is more about them. This other funders to consider, I just want to point out that it says subject area, geographic area, and grant amounts. It seems to lean a lot more on those last two than it does on the subject area. Notice how many of those are in Texas, 6 of 6. So not always great to use as something that's that analogous to the same type of giving as far as subject area. Here's that really important part. How do you apply? How often do they, put out, their grant proposals? What's the initial approach? It's a letter of inquiry. How many copies? What are the deadlines? Final notification. Here's their giving limitations, and notice what we find right away. Okay, so that's not going to help us necessarily in Ohio, but if we lived in Texas, the giving's limited there. And that goes back to what we talked about. You can search for just Ohio, but you can search the whole United States as well. Here's their financials. Here's who works there, and potentially what you may see sometimes is their ability to connect with people on LinkedIn. And that's kind of nice. You might just want to connect with someone and have that conversation or follow what they're doing. Here's the communications, and here's the contact information that we talked about, including right here, how to get into the foundation and get additional information about how to work with them. What I like here is you can see specifically, you might even have particular staff, in this case, Alan Matthews and Samantha Seal, that you can work with. Okay. So again, going along the left side here, every single record is going to use that method. Yes, certainly we can look at all the recipients. We can look at all of the grant funders or the grant makers, the foundations. So there's a lot of different ways to interact with this database. If I like the Moody Foundation, what I could do is just simply check it right here. If you just want the records, you can get 100 at a time and you can download those. If you want the entire profile, it only allows you to do 10 at a time, and you will need to kind of count that out. So let's just say I picked these 4 to start with. And what I'll do is I'll just simply come up to the top here where it says tools, and I can go ahead and either download by a PDF, I can download as a more of a spreadsheet, or I can email those records to myself. Okay, if I click on email a PDF, it's going to ask, who do you want to send those to? If you have someone else you work with, your development director, your ED, your executive director, a volunteer, a board member, you might put their name in there, then your name and your address. And in the message, this is where I talked about saying something like, Science Museum US, and then maybe the next number 1. And maybe as you go through your list, you'd name those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but maybe later you'd go back and say all those that support science museums just in Ohio. Okay, so there's a lot of different ways you can do that. Just remember to send yourself a copy if you're not the one that you're sending it to, and then you just click on continue and it downloads. If you were to do it as a PDF, it'll ask you, do you want to save a list or save profiles? If you save the profiles, it'll prepare a PDF for you, and then you just simply take that PDF and you could download it into your flash drive. So feel free to bring a drive with you when you come here to the library. And that's very specifically how you use this database. Want to go back to the search, the find funding screen again to just let you know that we looked at specifically, do you want to include U.S. federal funders? In the advanced search, and having the ability to add these additional filters, do you want to search specific years? Is there a specific minimum grant amount that you want? And if you pick more than one subject area, do you want to match any, or do you want to match both of those? Obviously, if you click on match all, it's going to be a little bit more selective there. Let me pause for a moment, see if there are any questions.
So no questions. I just want to be respectful of time because we're almost at the time commitment that we had. Clearly, we could sit and listen all day long, David. I mean, you just have so much to share. Do you want to give your contact information to the group? Maybe you can just type your email and Zach's email in the chat box there.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to do that.
People can reach out and I just want to show the group one thing on our site here. So I'm going to do a share screen. So hang on just 2 seconds, because as David said, there are hundreds and hundreds of different resources out there. When you come up here and click on these bouncing balls on the left-hand side, there'll be a drop-down menu. Specifically under Be a Nonprofit Leader, there is a nonprofit fundamentals library that we curate. It's a video-based no-cost training series, and it grew out of these types of grant trainings because sure as heck, someone would call 2 days after and say, when is your next live event? And that's why we started recording these and also curating. Some of them David pointed to already. So introduction to fundraising planning, grant writing, corporate giving, and so on down there. And then of course there's other areas, but specific to fundraising and grant writing, there right off the bat is some amazing training that's available to you at no cost. And the other thing I would point out with our relatively new now website, it's an AI search. So if you just type in whatever your topic is at the top, it automatically finds the resources that are either on our website, or there's that replay, by the way, of that first nuts and bolts, or on our blog. So it searches everything that we have published. Okay. Any final pearls of wisdom, David?
I just want to thank all of you for your time today and for sharing with one another. I have in the chat gone ahead and put Zachary's contact information, both by phone and by email. We did talk about the grant support page at toledolibrary.org under services. So feel free to contact Zachary that way and fill out the form to get a grant search going. And know that we're here at any time to help you. You're welcome to stay on here right after 4. Heather's always great about being really respectful of your time, but I'm here to answer further questions. Wanted to give you a feel of the FDO. I will say that there are many other tools in there, but I also understand there are a number of people who have used Foundation Directory Online. So I always like to talk about some of those affiliated resources on our website and then let you know that we're here to help you do a one-on-one search or to do some searching for you.
Okay, so David, it's always a pleasure to work with you and to support our nonprofit community. Thank you for everything that you and your group do. So that I'm going to turn off the recording now because this officially ends the webinar. As David said, if we can stay on for a few minutes, if you have questions, I see one hand raised there. So thank you for joining us, and you know where to find us and all the great resources between the center and the library. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, everyone.